I never wanted to move into that apartment. It was one of those low-rise townhouse complexes, all painted in the same faded beige with bush trimmed too neatly, like the place was designed to look safe. But the end result was a kind of oppressive silence. Still, after rent went up downtown and my roommate got married, I didn't have much choice. It was on a cul-de-sac in Bowville, Illinois. A dead-end street surrounded by bare trees and invisible neighbors. It felt like no one there really lived. They just inhabited. Quick smiles, doors slammed shut fast, and no kids playing outside, even on sunny days. But it was cheap, and I needed peace. I had just lost my mom, and all I wanted was quiet. The first few days, the apartment seemed normal, empty, sure, but clean. The walls still bore marks from old pictures, and there was a faint scent of cheap candle mixed with something older, something like damp wood. I didn't think much of it. I spent the weekend unpacking boxes and organizing my things. On Monday morning, when I left for work, I noticed something strange in the mailbox. A plain white envelope, no stamp, no address. Inside, a folded piece of paper. Written in shaky penmanship, "Don't leave the bedroom light on after midnight." I thought it was a prank. Maybe an old message someone left by mistake, but the warning stuck in my head all day. When I came home, the envelope and paper were gone. I thought, maybe I had imagined it. That night, I left the bedroom light on past midnight, just out of stubbornness. But when the clock hit 12:35 a.m., I heard a noise like someone scratching on the glass of my bedroom window. It was a slow, dragging scrape. I looked through the blinds. Nothing there. But my whole body froze. The next morning I saw marks on the glass. 4 thin, parallel scratches. Too high up to be made by a child. And the weirdest part, they were on the inside of the window. I started sleeping with every light off. 3 days later, when I got home from work, the front door was ajar, not broken in, just slightly open. I knew I had locked it. It took me nearly 5 minutes to build the courage to go inside. I grabbed the hallway lamp as an improvised weapon. I searched every room. Nothing seemed out of place. Except for one thing, on the bathroom mirror, something was written what looked like steam, though there was no humidity. He liked it better dark. I called the rental office. The woman on the phone was strangely evasive. She said the last tenant stayed a short time and left without notice. I asked if he'd left anything behind. She gave a curt, not that I know of. When I pressed further, she transferred me to another department. The call dropped. In the nights that followed, I started hearing footsteps. Not mine. Steps coming. From the hallway well after I'd gone to bed. The sound was unmistakable. Creaking wood. First short, then slow, and deliberate. Sometimes they stopped right outside my bedroom door. I never opened it to look. I installed a cheap Wi-Fi camera pointed down the hallway. The first night, nothing happened. The second night, at 3:02 a.m., I got a motion alert. The 11-second clip showed the hallway in total darkness. Then, halfway through, something crossed the frame. Something that shouldn't be there. A silhouette. Tall, thin, no visible face. It just appeared from one side and walked out of view. I called the police. They came, watched the video, and told me it could be a reflection. One officer suggested, sometimes car headlights on the street cause these things. Another said I might be stressed. They gave me a therapist's phone number. That night, I slept in my car. The next morning, when I returned, I found another note taped to the door. Folded, no envelope. Don't record what you're not ready to see. I unplugged the cameras. I started looking for another place. 2 nights before moving out. The worst happened. Around 2:40 a.m., I was awake, wrapped in a blanket on the couch, watching TV with the volume low. Then I heard a sound from the bathroom, a wet noise, like someone just got out of the shower and was dripping on the floor. The bathroom door was closed, but beneath it, I saw the shadow of 2 feet, completely still. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I stared at that sliver of light for over half an hour. Then. The shadow moved, slowly, out of the room, but no one ever came out. It just disappeared from the light. The next morning, I went into the bathroom. It was dry. But on the mirror, there was a new message, written much smaller. You left the light on. Now he knows you saw. I never went back that night. Or any other. I moved out 2 days later. Took only the essentials. Left the rest behind, including the camera, which I forgot to disconnect from my account about a month later. I got a notification from it. An automatic capture emailed to me. A short video. Dated 3 days before. The footage shows the empty hallway. Then at 2:44 a.m., the silhouette appears again. This time, it stops. Looks directly at the camera. The face is visible now. God, it's mine. I always thought I was pretty level-headed. I'd grown up in a small town in southern Illinois, and I'd never really experienced anything truly creepy. At least nothing I couldn't explain away. But that fall in 2020, something happened. That shook me down to my core. I had just moved into a small rental house on Maple Drive. It was nothing fancy. 3 bedrooms, white siding, a porch swing hanging from one corner. Quiet neighborhood, older folks mostly, families who kept to themselves. I was fresh out of a rough breakup, trying to get my life back on track. And living alone seemed like a good reset. The first few weeks were uneventful. I settled into my routine, work, gym, dinner, sleep. But one thing quickly caught my attention. A man who lived 2 houses down. I never saw him during the day, but every night, around 10 or 11 p.m., he'd be outside on his porch, just standing or sitting silently, staring straight at my house. There was something off about the way he watched. Not like a friendly neighbor. More like he was waiting for something. I tried to shrug it off. Maybe he was lonely. Maybe he was just a night owl. One night, as I pulled into my driveway around 10:30, he was there again. Just standing, shoulders slumped, face shadowed under a baseball cap. I caught his eyes for a second, and I swear he didn't blink. Just kept staring down and made my skin crawl. Weeks passed, and strange things started happening. At first, little things, footsteps on the porch when I knew I was alone, lights flickering, the feeling of being watched even when no one was around. One night, I woke up to the sound of the back door rattling. Someone was trying to open it. I froze, heart hammering. I kept my phone close and called 911. The dispatcher assured me help was coming. When the police arrived, they found large footprints in the backyard gravel. They walked right up to the door. No forced entry, but the footprints were unmistakable. The officers told me there wasn't much they could do since no crime had technically been committed. I felt helpless. I installed security cameras. One on the back porch, another facing the front yard. The first few nights were quiet. Then one night at 2:15 a.m., the back camera triggered. I watched the live feed on my phone, heart pounding. A figure appeared in the frame, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black hoodie with the hood up. He moved deliberately, avoiding the motion sensors, like he knew exactly where to step. He stopped in front of the door, looked up at the camera, and smiled. A slow, stretched-out grin. Then he disappeared into the darkness. I called the police. Again. They watched the footage, agreed it was unsettling, but again said there was little they could do without proof of trespassing or violence. The next morning, I found muddy handprints smeared on the glass of the back door. 4 prints. Too high, too low, like someone crouched and rested their hands there, watching. I couldn't stay. I packed a bag and checked into a hotel that night. When I came back the next day, taped to my mailbox was a small note, scrawled in cramped letters. The cops leave, but I don't. I reported the note, and the officers said they would do extra patrols in the area. But by then, I was done. I broke my lease and moved out, left my deposit behind. Nothing was worth living in fear. A few weeks later, a message popped up on Facebook. From a woman named Sarah. She said she'd moved into my old place and was having similar experiences, footsteps at night. Someone knocking on the glass door around 2 a.m. I never replied. I've never been the type to believe in ghosts or anything supernatural. To me, fear has always been something real, something you can touch, see, or hear. The creak of a floorboard, the whisper of footsteps in an empty hallway. Not shadows. Or spirits. But that fall of 2019, living alone in my new rental house on Willow Lane, I learned that sometimes the scariest things don't need to be paranormal to invade your peace. When I moved in, the house felt perfect. 3 bedrooms, 2 stories, a fenced backyard, and big windows that let the autumn sunlight flood the rooms. I was exhausted from bouncing around with roommates who never respected my space. This was my fresh start. Finally alone. Finally some control over my own environment. The neighborhood was quiet. Too quiet, maybe. Mostly older couples or young families who kept to themselves. I didn't mind. I kept a late schedule anyway, working nights at the warehouse down the road. I'd get home around midnight, exhausted, and usually crash immediately. At first, everything was as normal as it could be. I'd come home, lock the doors, close the curtains, and try to forget the day's grind. But after a couple weeks, I noticed something strange about the curtains in the living room window. I was sure I closed them tight every night. Yet, morning. After morning, I'd find a small gap, just a thin slit, enough to peek through. I told myself it was the wind, or maybe I hadn't closed them fully in my exhaustion. But the gap didn't behave like a normal curtain gap. It was always in the same spot, right where someone's eye would rest if they were trying to look inside. One night, unable to shake the feeling, I stayed up and watched the window from my bedroom upstairs. Around 2 a.m., when the house was deathly quiet, I saw movement behind the curtain. Not a full figure, just a flicker. Like a shadow moving dot, my heart jumped. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the streetlight outside, or my imagination. But then I heard something else. Breathing. Slow, steady, deliberate. Right outside that window. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. That night I barely slept. The next day. I found a thin scratch on the wooden window frame. 4 or 5 long lines running vertically down the paint. As if someone had dragged their fingernails over it. I called the landlord and explained, asking if anyone else had reported problems. He laughed it off and said it was probably kids messing around and to call the police if it happened again. No cameras on the street, he said. No one had complained. I felt trapped that evening. I bought a small Wi-Fi security camera online and set it up pointed at the living room window. For days, nothing happened. Then, at 1:58 a.m. one night, my phone buzzed with a motion alert. I opened the video and watched in horror. Outside the window stood a man, tall, lean, wearing a dark jacket and gloves. He was perfectly still, staring up at the window like he was waiting for something. But what really unsettled me was what he was holding, a small, worn notebook. He never moved. Just stood there in the cold, his eyes locked on the glass. I called the police and showed them the footage. They said they'd patrol the area but reminded me again that no crime had been committed. Days later, I found that same notebook slipped under my front door. Inside. The pages were filled with scribbled writing, strange symbols, random letters, crossed out words, none of it making any sense. I wanted to burn it. But something stopped me. I shoved it in a drawer and tried to forget. The nights grew worse. I started hearing noises, footsteps pacing just outside the house, slow scraping sounds along the siding, the faintest whispering that I couldn't place. One night, I woke up to the sound of the front door unlocking. My heart stopped. I stayed frozen in bed. Listening. Then footsteps. Heavy, slow, deliberate, moving. Across the living room floor. The light under the door flickered on. I reached for my phone, but the battery was dead. The power had gone out. I lay there, paralyzed, until the first light of dawn. The next day, I packed. I told the landlord I was moving out immediately and gave no explanation. On my last night, I closed every curtain tight, locked every door, and Sat awake until the sun came up. I never saw the man again. But I still think about the notebook. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I see it lying there on the doorstep, waiting for me.